and thank you for coming today. Welcome to our second session in the workshop, How to Plan the Right PR and Marketing Tactics and Activities. Now, this subject was so enormous that when we started to put together this deck, we realized that really it's going to have to be split into part 1 and part 2. So in this session, we're talking a lot about all the different demographics. Hopefully, as you hear us go through, you'll be able to pick out characteristics which are relevant to your brands and your businesses, and how different demographics like to be marketed to on the different platforms, the messaging and the themes that you can use. So just to give you an overview, I will cover who am I again, and we will just recap what happened last week. I know there's some people on this call who were not on last week's call, so we'll just do a quick recap: why success needs a killer strategic PR and marketing plan, and how to put your entire marketing strategy on one page, as well as how different demographics behave, insights about the platforms and which platforms to use, and of course, how to get help. This is me and my family. I thought I'd mix up the picture from last week. I'm a wife and a mum to Fred and Sophie. When I'm not doing that, I'm consulting, training and mentoring businesses with their food and drink PR and marketing. Before now, I spent the first part of my career working in food and drink PR in London. I worked my way up to be an account director at just 26 years old. I worked at 3 of the biggest food and drink PR agencies in London, and managed budgets for multi-million-pound brands like Discovery Foods, Tilda Rice, Champagne Taittinger, some of the ones you can see here. And I launched most of the Gaucho restaurants back in the early noughties. I'm really passionate about great food and drink, but I knew that I wanted to make a difference to more people and more businesses. And that was always really my motivation. So I left London, I moved to Kent to set up Sharp Relations in 2010. This is a photo of me. I know I haven't aged a bit. That is indeed my mum and dad who were drafted in to pad out this photo and make the agency look a bit bigger because it was going into the Times supplement for small businesses. And I thought it was rather too small with just 3 of us. I spotted a gap in the market. There were so many smaller food and drinks brands that needed marketing and PR support, but they couldn't obviously engage the big kind of London and national PR agencies with their huge retainers. So it was a really exciting opportunity for me to work with some really new dynamic brands. This is the team today. There's 9 of us and everyone is very much real and not brought in to pad out the photographs. We work with great tasting food and drinks brands. We like them to be sustainable just because when you believe in the product, it's better for the people, it's better for the planet, and everybody wins. We've won loads of awards. This is the team picking up the Creative and Digital Award just last month, December 2021. We also, at the same ceremony, picked up the Small Business Award at the same event. We know our results drive incredible growth and awareness for the brands we work with. So it is really important that we partner with businesses that do align with our core values and are working towards, the best practices they can afford at each stage of their growth. We specialize in the wow, I see your brand everywhere, how are you guys doing that effect. We take on a small handful of new retained clients each month. Sadly, we can't work with everyone who approaches us, much as we would like to, but there are lots of ways we can work together if a retainer isn't right for you. We offer a mastermind, which is a new offering. It's just £100 a month where you can work with our team. There's regular training. You can ask any questions, get second opinions. You can use us as a sounding board for any of your marketing needs and questions. We can help you with your messaging, all that kind of thing. We do 2 live sessions each week, so you could join either of them. There's one on Monday at 12 noon and one on Friday at 10 a.m. So you can sign up to either one. Okay, so we're just going to quickly recap on last week, why success needs a killer strategic marketing and PR plan. We talked about New Year's resolutions and why rarely they make it to the end of the month. And it's because a resolution on its own is not enough. Motivation on its own is not enough. We're all very motivated to do things, to get fit, to quit smoking, drink less, whatever it might be. But every motivation or goal has to have fundamental change to actually make it happen. It needs a measurable plan of action to make sure it stays on track, and a new set of habits to replace the old habit, if you will. And then it needs commitment and dedication. Motivation alone is not enough to see change. So the businesses and brands which are really successful have turned marketing into a positive, repeatable habit. It's accountable for itself. It's measured at every stage, and it's executed continually throughout the year. The businesses which struggle tend to execute singular random tactics once or twice a quarter and then they give up when they don't see immediate success. Some people believe that having a great product or service is enough to get them noticed, but remember, no one knows how good your products or services are until after the sale has occurred. No one knows how good your products or services are until after the sale has occurred. Before they buy, they only know how good your marketing is. Put simply, the business with the best marketing team will win every time. Don't continue to do what you've always done if it isn't working. Knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. We did a session last week about planning your entire PR and marketing strategy on one page. There is a handout which we've posted in the Food and Drinks Business Academy Facebook group. So it's free, just go in there. You can get the sheet from last week and you can kind of work through this if you haven't already done it. But we started with the commercial objectives of your business, being clear where you're driving the commercial interests of the company. So you've got to start with this. If your marketing is not led by the overall objectives of the business, there's really no point. You'll be pulling in different directions from the outset. You won't see the change that you're hoping for. So make sure your objectives are SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Very simplified commercial objective, just for the purpose of this example, could be to double our revenue by December 2022 through new stockists. Obviously, that objective would be probably for a much smaller or a startup business rather than a more established one who may have a smaller percent of growth. But yeah, so we want to generate more stockists. So to change that commercial objective then into a communications objective, just a point there, I purposefully call it communications and not a marketing objective, because remember, all marketing is communications, but not all communications is marketing. So there is a subtle difference there. In this example, to double the revenue, as mentioned in the commercial objective, you would want to be communicating with the trade, whether that's retail or on trade. So the communications objective would be to drive awareness in the trade, to engage and generate product awareness with the buyers, for example. Then we look at the target market. Again, I hammered on for about 10 minutes last week about being niche. Please be niche. Don't try to widen the net in the hope of scooping more fish. You actually end up with no fish. Remember, if your product is relevant only to 5% of the population, but you're marketing to 50, that means only 10% of your marketing budget is actually hitting the spot and 90% is wasted. It's not good practice. Be niche. Dominate your perfect niche. Once you've done that, you can move on to the next one. In this example, food and beverage buyers at food service or retail establishments. So your messaging. Again, this is a huge session and I could probably do an entire workshop on messaging. In fact, that might be the one I do after the part 2 of the tactics. Like with the target market, you've got to be niche. It's actually really important to be specific. Don't be too vanilla. Don't whitewash your messaging. I was talking last week about how people often say to us, oh, I didn't want to say that in case it puts some people off. Well, you want to put some people off. You actually do. Your product will not be for everybody. You want your target market, though, to go, haha, that's totally me. I think that's funny. I think that's really engaging. I really love that content. You don't want them to walk past going, it's a little bit wishy-washy. It's not quite what I was expecting. Call out your perfect customers. Write your copy for the people you want to attract. Use their language, use their jargon. Always highlight why the target market would be interested. What need or did your product or service meet? And then marketing outlets and platforms. Thinking about where your target market will be found is absolutely crucial. I can't tell you how many businesses we talk to who are on certain social media platforms just because they thought they should be, just because it seemed like the right thing to do, not because there was actually a tactic or a strategy or they'd researched that their perfect target market was going to be on that platform. And we're always saying, get it down to 3. If you've only got a small amount of budget, get it down to 2 or 3 platforms. Don't try to do 10. Do 2 or 3 and do them really well and make sure they're really specific. So that's the recap over. I managed to do that in 9 minutes. Good. Let's dive into this week's session. So the marketing outlets, talking about where your target market will be found. Now, we have talked through the strategy stuff, so you know what the end goal of your marketing must be. Now let's look at what you're doing and where. I can't go through every single possible marketing activity because there are hundreds, but for the purpose of this workshop, let's break it down into the 8 main tactical areas of focus. First up, public relations. Of course, in my opinion, this is one of the most critical outlets. I would say that, did I mention we're an award-winning food and drink PR agency? But what is PR? PR is the focus of generating a favorable public image of your brand. It's earned, sometimes hard-earned, and highly trusted. PR includes press coverage, media relations, influencer relations, and a lot of social media activities overlap with PR, which is our second biggest service. As a marketing activity is probably one of the most cost-effective of all of the activities, and it can be done yourself, but it does take a lot of time and a little bit of know-how. Social media. Should you care about social media? Yes, absolutely. The stats I looked up yesterday stated there are 53 million active social media users in the UK. That is 78% of the UK population. This is huge. There is no other marketing outlet which has such an enormous potential. And it can be extremely cost effective. You know, you can do it yourself. However, it is really crucial that you have a proper strategy of what you are trying to say on each of these platforms and to whom. Why are you using these platforms? What's the purpose? How is your target market interacting with these platforms? Some are going to Instagram to discover a brand and buy it. Others are going to Instagram to learn more about your business. Others are going to Instagram just looking and watching, but through that process, discover new brands. We will go into this in more detail in subsequent sessions. Next is email marketing or newsletters. Nothing is more important than your route to market. It's all very well having followers on certain social media platforms. And I hear clients saying this, oh, you know, we've got 10,000 followers on Facebook. Well, that's brilliant. But do you remember last year when Facebook went down for 24 hours? Suddenly you couldn't interact at all with anyone on your, you know, of your 10,000 people on Facebook. So do work quite hard to create your own list, to create your own audience. It's safeguarding yourself. Build up your own customer lists of email addresses and other contact details, so you're not relying on just that one platform. Then we've got websites and SEO. This isn't just about search engine optimization, which is, you know, pushing your website higher up the rankings, as the name suggests, but it's also about how your brand appears to people. Again, it overlaps a lot with PR. How are people experiencing your brand online? How are they discovering it? Next, advertising. Advertising is great for many things. Everyone thinks that PRs hate advertising. We don't. It's friendly rivalry. We're just jealous because it's more measurable in many ways. But the right advertising with the right spend behind it can be seriously effective. It's not a good activity, however, if you have limited budgets generally, as the required spend to make something like Facebook ads work would probably be $1,500 for the agency consultation plus another £2,000 a month in spend. You're talking at about £3,500 a month to do Facebook ads well and make them really effective. If you can reach that level, you'll see some very good results. PR is jealous of advertising because you can pay to be anywhere. Whereas PR, you have to earn it and wait for editorial availability. However, it is much less trusted. It doesn't build your brand. And it only works as long as you're feeding the beast. The minute you stop feeding the beast, everything disappears. Whereas PR, it lasts, it stays, especially in these days where most PR is actually created on digital platforms. That link will be there forever, bringing people into your website even 2 years later. Then there's events. There is an event for almost everything. In the UK, there are several hundred food and drink events, from trade shows and exhibitions to local fairs. And finally, stunts. I put this in because it's something people talk about a lot, sometimes called guerrilla marketing. It's unconventional, one-off activation designed to grab attention. Flash mobs, changing your branding, Facebook's rebrand to Meta. Would we have all cared at all if the platform hadn't gone down for 24 hours a few days before? whether it was done on purpose or not, it served to show the world the effect of a Facebook-less world, showing its relevance, appearing on every national TV channel around the world. And then, oh, by the way, we're rebranding. Looks to me like very clever guerrilla marketing. A breakdown of the generations and different behaviors. Being able to differentiate between generations at every point in your sales funnel is essential. Using tailored communications, using promotions, the right messaging will help brands to increase sales to different generational groups. We do need to know how different types of people interact with different marketing tactics and activities. I did think about trying to create 2 or 3 avatars to talk through this, but it became very complicated. So I've gone back to the traditional format of talking about the 6 main living generations and their stereotypical characteristics and behaviors. Now, it is stereotyping. It isn't going to be a perfect overview. There will always be quite a wide range of what is normal for each generational groups. Don't worry if you think your target market doesn't perfectly fit these descriptions. It's actually great to notice these differences because this is how you're going to identify your niche, your perfect target market. So first is our oldest generation, known as the silent generation. These guys are age 76 or over. It's a subsection of the group known as the war babies, who were born between 1939 and 1945. The oldest of this generation was just 11 when the World War II broke out, and teenagers when it ended. So their formative years were formed by their experiences of war. This generation was raised by Victorians in a time when children were to be seen and not heard. They're considered to be disciplined, value-orientated, and loyal. I'm afraid when it comes to marketing, there are relatively few products specifically marketed towards this generation. But if you are looking to target them, the traditional channels are best: print newspapers, TV, and radio. Then we have our 57 to 75-year-old baby boomers, so named for the huge surge in births after World War II. They grew up in the 60s and 70s. They were the main driving force behind the hippie movement. It was a period of high economic growth, high employment, and prosperity. They had children of their own in the 70s and 80s. They're considered to be committed, self-sufficient, and competitive. While boomers aren't always the primary target demographic for many businesses, they actually hold the majority of UK disposable income. Regardless of how important baby boomers are for your business, it's always a good idea to tailor some of your marketing towards them. They're mostly retired and the longest living generation in history. Consumer service, they really value trusted recommendations and reviews when they're making purchase decisions. They place a lot of importance on the quality of interactions with brands and their employees, both in-store and online. They're very loyal to the brands they already like, more likely to focus on staying with the same brand than changing, and they prefer to shop in-store than online. In terms of technology, they entered adulthood and their middle age firmly in the analog era, but most have embraced technology. If they're buying online, they are more likely to shop through a tablet or laptop rather than a smartphone. Then we have our Gen X. These guys are aged from 41 to 56. This generation straddles the digital world. They grew up when technology was advancing fast, but wasn't readily available. They're considered to be resourceful, logical, and good problem solvers. Known as the last of the latchkey kids growing up without much adult supervision. This was because more mothers were working and Gen X children were expected to walk home from school, let themselves in and get on with things at home unsupervised. As such, they're resourceful and competent. In terms of buying, they will be slower to adopt something new, faster than a boomer, but slower than a millennial. They'll try something new. If they like it, they will keep buying it regardless of what else is on the market. They do have high brand loyalty, but they do consider change. They have great spending power, but they do tend to be more careful and cautious than subsequent generations. And this generation now holds most of the senior roles in this country. They like to shop in store or on websites, and equally happy to shop through a tablet, a laptop, or a phone. Customer service, they're more wary of being sold to. They're very likely to get a second opinion or pause before making a purchase. Then we've got millennials. They are aged from 25 to 40. They're the first generation to be digital natives, which has made this generation very self-sufficient when it comes to information. They don't have to rely on others to solve their problems. They are considered to be confident, curious, and questioning of authority. Last year, millennials overtook baby boomers as the largest adult generation in the UK. They're strongly motivated by social causes and corporate responsibility to the country. They're very eco-aware. Millennials contain the higher proportion of higher education degrees and masters than any other generation. However, they were the first to pay for their degrees and higher education. So a huge number of millennials have student debt, which ranges from 9,000 to 30,000. This has had a huge effect on this generation. They've been much slower to afford houses. And of course, they entered the workplace during a recession. The estimation from the Office of National Statistics suggests that millennials earn 20% less on average than previous generations at the same age. Millennials were the first generation to grow up alongside digital technology. It's had a big impact on their social and consumer characteristics. Being digital natives, they're much more comfortable shopping online than previous generations. They're much less likely to stay loyal to a particular brand, instead preferring to shop around if there are better options available. They will be swayed by prices and discounts, that kind of thing, a good deal of better value. They're more likely to prefer brands that have ethical or green ideologies. They enjoy shopping. They see it as a social activity, more so than earlier generations. They search for deals and they are swayed by special offers. This generation have the highest percentage of parents to young children. So they are currently the homemaking generation. Where they shop, they are genuinely omnichannel. They are happy to shop absolutely anywhere, in-store, online, through social media, through an app. They aren't worried about it. They use Amazon more than any other generation. Customer service, they are really happy to use chatbots or listen to videos for information. They don't mind it not being a person, unlike the previous generations would rather talk to a person, but they are more likely to be annoyed if they can't find the information at all. And then we come to Gen Z. This generation is aged from 9 to 24. This group has never known life without technology. They're ambitious digital natives and confident, range from primary school to young professionals. So it's a very big gap of time. Gen Z is growing in their power for the changing world. Greta Thunberg is often dubbed the face of Gen Z. This generation is quite serious. They've grown up with a lot of information about the climate crisis, and their education at school has been a lot about reuse and recycle and regeneration. It's very important to this generation. And they also have high student debts to pay off. The difference is that fewer Gen Z have been going into higher education than before, preferring instead to go into apprenticeships and internships and slightly different things, because they've seen what debt has done to the generation before them, and they are keen to avoid it. Gen Z also has significantly more influence over the consumer market than their actual spending or buying power would suggest. And this is because of the influence they are having on their parents buying decisions and on wider product trends. They're very informed consumers, less attached to specific brands, more likely to shop around, very keen to try new things. Price point may be challenging for regular purchasing, and they'll always choose an independent store over a chain store if they can. Gen Z is the most gender non-specific of all the generations. Out of all the generations, they're the most likely to shop via social media. They have high expectations as consumers, both from their customer service and product quality. They like individualized shopping experience that can be tailored to their own preferences. So they like a shop assistant to come up and talk to them and help them to find the perfect thing. Gen Zers share many consumer characteristics with millennials. So in this sense, retailers and business owners and brands shouldn't worry too much about having to completely reinvent their marketing strategy just for Gen Z. And then Generation Alpha is aged 8 and below. They're really too young to be considered for marketing. We're already seeing the term COVID babies used in modern parlance in reference to children who were born or very young at the beginning of lockdown. Characteristics, they weren't used to being handled by other people, a little bit more nervous. Like the war babies, I suspect we're going to see a subsection of this generation called out as COVID babies from 2020 to, well, whenever this ends. So let's interrogate the tactics we should be using and the best way to encourage engagement on each of these different platforms. So public relations. Public relations has a strong effect on all the generations, but in very different ways. It's one of the most cost-effective forms of marketing and highly trusted. There's no doubt that media coverage has a significant effect on every generation, but the messaging does need to be tailored appropriately. Even images, you would use slightly different images. And of course, all the different platforms and media outlets are very different. Boomers and Gen X are influenced heavily by word of mouth recommendation, equally from friends and families, as well as magazines, newspapers, reviews, write-ups, that kind of thing. Boomers still prefer print, whereas Gen X are evenly split between print and digital versions of the press they consume. They will trust certain media more than others. For example, national press over tabloids, TV and radio. They put a lot of store in the BBC as a highly trusted source. Messaging to these guys should always focus on quality and therefore value. This doesn't mean being the cheapest. This means being the best value, for quality. When talking to Gen X, messaging should be straightforward, address the pain points and sell the value. They do like celebrity endorsement. They do like word of mouth, personal recommendations. They will always read the reviews. They will research their purchases, especially bigger ones, and they will look for second opinions. They're influenced by their Gen Z children. For millennials and Gen Z, they are influenced by magazines, websites, e-zines and blogs. It's much more digital, the way they're consuming media. They stream their TV to order, and they would always choose a podcast over listening to the radio. They like to choose the content that they want to see, and they like to interact with it. And they're much more likely to follow influencers and listen to influencers. They like to be entertained by your brand as well. So be honest, be direct. They want value and authenticity and relevance. Don't forget, they are strongly influenced by social and environmental issues. They can be considered idealistic, but they are socially conscious. Millennials and Gen Z, they really want to make a difference to the world. They want the world to be a different place. Gen Z share stories about investing in initiatives that benefit the local community, the environment, important causes. Your Gen Z customers will be able to tell if you are genuinely interested in these things, and they'll be much more inclined to shop with you as a result. Let's look at social media. So for boomers, there's a huge percentage on Facebook. It's the platform they use more than any other platform, except for WhatsApp, which they use a lot. And they tracked the highest growth on Instagram over the last year. Gen Z, X, they use social media for personal Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, but also for work. They're quite high proportion using Twitter and LinkedIn. Some have embraced Clubhouse. They're more likely to watch and listen rather than post on social media. They don't like to share very much about their lives, but it doesn't mean they aren't listening. When you're using images to appeal to this generation, they need to be clear, explanatory. They respond really well to infographics. Use clear images which focus on quality and usability. And messaging should follow the same theme. Don't try to sell to them. Show them the ways why your product is good, why it has that kind of authority. They will use social media primarily as a discovery platform for new brands. Millennials are very keen to embrace new platforms. They are omni-channel. They use all of them, particularly Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, but most are also, there's a huge growing percentage of millennials on LinkedIn using it for work. Encourage UGC, user-generated content. Millennials love to be involved in the experience. So this would be asking them to upload their own photos, tag in people, like and follow, get them, encourage them to interact with your content. They don't mind being marketed to, they're used to it, but there is a growing movement towards being kind online and showing some of the real side of life, as well as the kind of perfect filtered images. Use images with faces and hands so that it pulls people in, it creates a more emotional connection with the content. Social media, in terms of influencers, they still like the big influencers. So micro influencers are 10,000 to 100,000 followers. Macro influencers are 100,000 plus. Millennials will still be influenced by these guys. For Gen Z, the best way to reach this generation is through social media. They absolutely love interactive content, reels, lives, TikTok, content which they can take and repurpose and make their own. Gen Z use YouTube more than any other generation, as well as Snapchat, Snap Map, Find My Friends, Instagram stories. You've got to make your product Instagrammable for this generation to get them excited about it. But your images, unlike millennials who are really happy to see filtered images looking perfect, Gen Z would rather the images were authentic, not too perfect, not too polished. So do include hands as well, do include faces for more engagement. Remember, Gen Z are all about experience, and the image of the hand helps them to engage emotionally in the content. It involve them in your content, ask them questions, run polls, be interactive, talk in their language, which often is emojis. Yeah, it's that authentic, meaningful interaction that's really key here. Good or bad, they will share their opinions on social media. So bear that in mind. Do talk about social and environmental issues if you are looking to engage with this generation. They are influenced by social media influencers, but they love a nano influencer, which is somebody who's maybe only got a few thousand followers, under 10,000 certainly. They like it because it's more authentic, it's more genuine, and so they interact much better with it. Email marketing. So for boomers and Gen X, email marketing works well to drive sales, but only if they're already a loyal brand follower. It's much less likely to convert new customers, however, and generally they're less keen to part with their email address if they can help it. For Gen X, email marketing works well if you add in case studies and testimonials. Millennials and Gen Z, they don't mind email marketing. They tend to sign up for lots of newsletters. They would much rather sign up for a newsletter than be given a leaflet due to their eco-conscious motivations. They do read their emails generally. Websites and SEO. Boomers are much more likely to buy from your website rather than through an app. So make this really easy for them. Have a big buy button, make it really simple and easy for them to navigate. And they will search through Google to find your website. Gen X, much more likely to use your website to research your product. They will buy through it too, but they also like to see reviews. They will click around and have a look at a few things before hitting the buy now button. Millennials will interact with all areas of your website. They'll use it to buy, they'll use it to research and interrogate your brand values. Whereas a Gen Z is more likely to use your website to interrogate your values, your ethics, and your personality as a brand. They might buy through it too. Advertising. Boomers and Gen X, much less likely to buy through social media, but they are more influenced by bigger advertising, such as TV or outdoor, such as this image here. Millennials, well, they really like personalization. So if you're doing paid traffic through, for example, social media or Google Ads, something like that, make sure you're calling them out again with that messaging. Make sure the ad feels like it's speaking perfectly to them. Gen Z, they respond best, of course, to authenticity. So being real. So try and make your advertising story-based rather than salesy. And events. Boomers love consumer fairs. They often make up the highest percentage of footfall at shows. These guys generally have more time on their hands as they aren't raising children. Most are retired, and the ones who are still working tend to enjoy a lot of flexibility around that work. So they have time and they have the highest disposable income of all the generations. So couple this with their preference for seeing and feeling the quality of things, for buying in store before they buy them. It makes events a very, very good way to engage with this generation. Gen X can be found at both trade and consumer fairs. Millennials are a big cohort, so often looks like they attend a lot of events. However, as a percentage of the total demographic, they are less likely to go to consumer fairs, probably by virtue of being busy working or raising young children. Gen Z, well, they love experiential events. Escape rooms, tasting events have really rocketed in the last five or so years. This is where they can be involved. This is the generation who have been taught in a very kinesthetic way where they can see, touch, and interact with the content around them. So if you are wanting to engage with Gen Z, make sure you are making it interactive. Make sure there's something they can do. Can they taste? Can they be part of it? So that pretty much brings us to the end of that part of part one of the PR and marketing tactics. The next session, which I'm going to do in 2 weeks' time, which I think is the 27th, will go into more about how you put together a press release, how you plan out your social media content in advance, and how you offset all of those things in a kind of integrated PR plan so that all of your messaging. So now you know your messaging, you know what platforms you're talking on, but how do you bring all of those things together and make sure it's being executed in an easy to follow way that you can give this plan to somebody else and they will know exactly where you're at. So that's what we'll do on part 2 of the tactics session. If you need any help from us, we offer a number of different vehicles. I had fun doing this last night. So the VW Polo, this was my very first car, which I loved more than I can tell you. We grew up in the countryside, so having a car was just amazing. It was a banger. So the VW Polo option, this is nippy, it's lightweight, it's easy to maneuver. It's our food and drink business masterclass. Mastermind, sorry. I talked about this earlier. There are 2 group sessions you can join. One is on a Monday at 12 noon. One's on a Friday at 10 a.m. It's run by the team here at Sharp Relations. You'll have access to a weekly group call. We run training sessions, much like this. We do planning and resources. And, our team is here to help answer your questions when you have them, to be a sounding board for you. It's just £100 a month, really easy to sign up. Then we've got the Audi solution. You'll get where you need to be in comfort, at speed, look pretty good too. This is perfect if you know you really need some help and someone to keep you on track, but employing an agency is just a little bit too much for you right now. This just runs month to month, so you can start and stop as you like. But what we'll do is we'll work through what you can do next, where you should be focusing your time, your effort, your budget, what matters most. I've helped build hundreds of brands and businesses over the years, from startup to £1 million turnover in just 1 year for some of them. It's a really effective and affordable way to grow your business. The changes my mentees have seen have made tens to hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of change. So this solution is mentoring with me one-to-one. We have a session every week. I'm available to answer questions if you need me, and it costs just £900 a month. Then we've got the Tesla solution. This is fast, sustainable, and can think for you. This is becoming a client of Sharp Relations. You get where you need to be fast, and of course, looking really stylish. And we can literally put together all these different elements of the PR and marketing mix and make sure that it's absolutely hitting where you need to be and when you need to be there. Retainers start from about £1,500 per month. So, and yeah, we'll be running part 2 of the PR and marketing tactics on Thursday, the 27th at 10:30. Sorry, I'm not doing one next week. I'm actually moving house next week. So putting on I just thought I couldn't do that surrounded by boxes. So we are going to skip a week and then we'll be back on Thursday, the 27th. Thanks for coming. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you want to do anything really nice for us, please do head to our Google page and give us a 5-star review. It really helps us a lot. So if you guys got any questions, I'm going to stop screen sharing now. Please feel free to unmute your microphones. We've got about 10 minutes now till the end of the session, and I'd be really happy to take any questions if anyone has any. So the handouts will all be posted into the Facebook, the Food and Drink Business Academy Facebook page. We've been posting all of the handouts in there, so you can go in there and download them. And for this one, it kind of breaks down all the different generations and the best way to contact them. So really helpful when you're kind of planning your PR and marketing.
What was what was a UGC again? You mentioned it earlier under the millennials.
That's user generated content. So UGC would be things like, maybe you have an ingredient brand and you're looking to get some content, some UGC on social media. What you might do is run a competition for people to upload their own photos or their own recipes working with your ingredient brand, and an image, and tagging in various things and hashtagging in various things. And then you choose one of them. That's UGC. Literally your users, your customers are generating the content for you. Then you're sharing it onto your social media.
And I mean, generally, sorry to go into that, because I was actually thinking about that last week for exactly that. I didn't know it was called that, but you've got to have a giveaway at the end, I assume. That's the sort of part of the deal.
It's good to incentivize why somebody's doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily. There's lots of different brands who, no, I would say it's much better if you are incentivizing people sharing content online. And you can just have, to win a month's supply of the product, or to win a hamper, or to win, it could be anything you want. But I think incentivizing it makes it easier, and it keeps the whole thing ticking along a little bit faster.
And another bit, because another thing that's new to me is a UTM, I think you called it last week. And would you use that then to track how your you know, so how that competition is going, for example, do those two link together so you can, or is it sort of you're tracking it in a way just by seeing the number of kind of responses you're getting via a, you know, offer that you're doing, like an Instagram photo offer?
Yeah, I would think that those two activities, just as a gut reaction, having not interrogated it in depth, I would think those two activities probably have different motivations, different objectives. I would imagine getting people to do the competition online and share UGC is much more about brand building. It's much more about building a community and getting people together. Whereas using a UTM to track sales, you wouldn't use that really as a sales mechanism. It's more of a brand building and awareness thing. Whereas UTM, I would put that on, if we had generated a really nice piece of coverage in something like The Independent gets a huge amount of traffic through it, and they have follow links, we'll often put a UTM link hidden behind the perfect looking link on that site, so that when traffic is going through The Independent coming into your site, you're actually able to see how much has come in, which you can see anyway from Google Analytics, but how many of them converted into sales. So you get much better data from that kind of PR activity, because PR notoriously is quite hard to link directly to sales. But we know there is a strong correlation, and a UTM just allows us to join up the dots a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm old school, I suppose. So, like, you know, if you were to place a piece, for example, and they, you know, they're asking for your links, you just, when you send that link, you're putting a UTM behind it, basically, so you know. Or are you talking about paid advertising in order to be able to create that UTM?
No, I am talking about PR. It takes a lot of negotiation, because editorial don't always love using UTM links. So it can take a good relationship to negotiate something like that. If you were using advertising, definitely you would be using a UTM link, because you can.
Yeah.
So you would track your sales directly from each piece of online advertising that you're doing, for sure.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
No worries. What's your product?
We're a pub down in Dorset that we've just opened, having sort of revamped the whole thing, basically, and just trying to raise the profile of it. I want to increase the visual image of the food, but so that people actually take good photos of their food before posting it, as opposed to sort of not such good photos.
I think it's a huge area, isn't it, for pubs, getting people to post up content, whether it's pictures of people enjoying a certain thing. One of the pubs we worked with had the most incredible looking cocktail. I don't think they necessarily made a lot of sales on this cocktail, but it just looked beautiful, and it sort of smoked as it came out, and it came out with a beautiful looking snacked amuse-bouche cocktail. And it was always a surprise when the amuse-bouche came and everyone was taking photos of it, and it just photographed so well. So it's almost encouraging. And then people were coming just for this cocktail. Yeah. And of course, then they stay and they have supper, and you've got a good upsell there.
That's what we need. I've actually just had an away day or few days with the team, just to try and engage them on marketing. So your chat last week was very helpful, because their concept of how a business is versus my background to marketing, but theirs is like just, you know, customer based, and I'm like, you've got to link the two. So it's been really helpful.
Yeah, brilliant. Good. Thank you. I'm really pleased that it's been helpful for you.
Yeah, I got them to all build an avatar of who they thought their perfect customer was.
I think that's very, very useful.
Yeah, it was great. And they all came up with very different people. So it's quite useful to get them to narrow it down.
Yeah. And that's being so specific. It's I can't really explain how important that is, and not being trying to hit everyone. And it's hard, especially for something like a pub, where at different points in the week you probably have different demographics coming in throughout the week, but it will be very specifically different types of people at different times and ordering different types of things. So you can really focus that down.
Exactly right. We ended up breaking it down into lunch guests, dinner guests, and then room guests, who are all completely different customer base, basically.
Yeah.
All coming from different areas, all wanting different things. So I hope that's been really helpful.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'm really pleased. Well, do come back on the 27th When we'll do the second half of the kind of PR and marketing tactics, we'll talk about if you wanted to put together your own press release, how you would do that and how you'd find contacts if you wanted to do that. We will talk through all the different elements of things not to forget for each of those kind of big PR and marketing tactics, and a bit more about things like UGC and how you can drive that, how you can get influencers coming into your pub and interacting, and how you ask them to interact with your pub.
Yeah, no, it's been, definitely. I will be there. It's been really good. Revamped. I'm, like I say, I've been out of the game for a while, so it's good to.
Oh, brilliant. Well, good luck with it all.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And good luck with the move.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be a little bit more zen in 2 weeks' time when it's all done.
Yeah, stressful.
Anyone else got any other questions they want to ask?
AJ,
hi, Peter.
Peter, what a fascinating session. I'm going to take a while to digest everything you've gone through there. One thing that occurs to me, I'm targeting millennials, and would it be right, if you're wanting to hire somebody to help you with your marketing, that you should be hiring a millennial to market to millennials?
Not necessarily. A good marketing professional will be able to market to any demographic perfectly adequately. I wouldn't say so, no. You know, I think as long as they have the capability of getting inside the mindset of that demographic and they have a good working understanding of how to change messaging for them, then no, I don't think they need to be a millennial at all.
Okay, you surprised me. I just kind of thought that if a millennial was doing it, they would really understand millennials because they are one, and that would be a natural fit. You don't think that's the case?
I think you're right in that it would be a natural fit, sure. But I don't think to the exclusion of everybody else. I do think there are some very, very good marketing and PR professionals out there who are perfectly capable of tailoring and tweaking the content to different areas. You might be right in that a millennial maybe will be able to really dive deep into the emotional hooks that would really appeal to their generation. Sure, but I don't think it would be to the exclusion, as I say. So I wouldn't turn down somebody who's very good, who's a bit older or a bit younger, just for that reason. I think, you know, particularly if they're a bit younger, I think Gen Z and millennials are very similar in many of the kind of messaging and motivations and emotional hooks that they have. So it's still quite a nice tie together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
No worries. What's your brand, Peter?
So my brand is Wine That's Fruit, WTF
wow.
for short. I'm putting fruit wines in cans. I've got a mock-up here that I've been working on, and going to break the wine market up.
Amazing.
Drink. So yeah, but I'm not my target market. That's where I struggle with. I listen to all you say, and the best that I could ever do if I was doing this myself is I'm really not in the psyche of millennials. So that's why I thought I need a millennial to do this for me. That's where I was going with that. But anyway, we'll have a separate conversation because we're going to pick up about how you might be able to help.
Yeah, that would be great, Peter. I'd love to. Sounds really good.
Thanks.
Brilliant. Well, it's 11:28. So thank you everyone for coming along today. I hope I see you guys again in 2 weeks' time for part 2 of this session. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming along. I hope you have a good rest of the day. And don't hesitate to email me if you want to. I'm aj@sharprelations.com. I will ping out an email to everyone after this session with some links and things in it, so you guys can follow some of the links that Isabella and the team have been sharing. So yeah, thank you so much.